Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Collectors with Cards Drinking Coffee. Today we have some body armor. This is not sponsored, but maybe one day. We'll see. Got to stay hydrated, get those electrolytes. So today we have a very special guest, obviously, and someone that I actually haven't really had the opportunity to talk with yet. So this is going to be us learning about him together. This is going to be exciting. I've tried to catch up a little bit on what he's been doing lately and who he's connected to in the past, and I think we'll have some interesting stories to share here today. So I'd like to welcome Pokemon Classics. Matt, how you doing?
Hey everybody, it's a pleasure to be here. I've been watching your podcast for a while and huge fan. You've had some pretty major legends of the hobby appearing on your program, so I encourage you to keep up the good work with that. And frankly, look at the guys like Gem Mint, and I think you had Gary on before, and you've had the infamous PokeRev appearing on the channel twice now.
Yep, twice.
So it's big shoes to fill to be compared to some of those guys in the hobby. They're legends of what we do. So it's great to be here. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah, of course, man. Happy to have you. It's as great as it is to have these legends in the community on. This podcast is really about sharing the entirety of the history of Pokemon collecting, and there's a lot more of us out there that don't have that limelight that they do. And it's funny, you look back, years in the past, and there's connections to these guys, like me and PokeRev, me and Gen Mint, me and all these guys. I've had connections with before they were, I guess, who they are today, right? They're these big names in social media. So it's a lot of fun. It's great to bring on anybody and everybody. So let's get to know you a little bit better, Matt. How long have you been collecting Pokemon for? Because from what I see with your collection, it's got to be a long time.
Yeah, so I was a kid when Pokemon originally came out. The release in English here in the United States, 1998, the cartoon, 1999 with the game. I guess I was one of those individuals that was a little bit skeptical at first, thinking that this was just like another one of those trends appealing to a younger target demographic than what I felt was beneath me.
Mm.
And I was at a birthday party with one of my best friends at the time. And for his birthday, his parents were taking him the next day to the card store to pick out whatever holographic card he wanted out of the display case. And he ended up going with the Shadowless Blastoise. And so he had a couple theme decks for his birthday party. I was over there for a slumber party, and that really drew me in, was just having that social aspect behind it, where it wasn't just like this TV show with these anthropomorphic characters speaking. Rather, it was like this social activity that had a bunch of my friends involved. And so it was kind of that environment that sucked me in. Since then, I've been collecting English set cards mainly. I actually volunteered at a league that was near my house. And there's an interesting backstory behind that, where I got pulled into working the league as a gym leader at the age of like 12 or 13.
Oh,
And I
wow.
kind of inherited that league when the main person running it moved away. So a lot of responsibility thrust onto me that way, but opened the doors to meet a lot of people, to really get immersed in the hobby, to kind of take more of a leadership role even at a young age.
Hmm.
So that kind of propelled me forward into it. Continued expanding the collection throughout high school, college, a little bit here and there, was hit and miss. And the passion really came back after finishing up with college and not having all those distractions and the college bills to worry about. I had a little discretionary income, throw back into something that was an interest in childhood. So that's kind of the backstory about how I initially got started.
Sweet. Well, I want to pick that and pick your brain a little bit more on the detail there, because first you mentioned Shadowless Blastoise back in the day. Now, I mean, for all of us, that's something that we kind of discover later on. So that memory that you have of that, did you know it was a shadowless card then when it was happening, or do you just look back at that memory now and remember that that's what that was?
Yeah, so the reason why I know that that was a Shadowless Blastoise is I actually have a prop here. I don't have the Shadowless Blastoise, but I had some pocket money with me when we went to the local card store that day. And that's when I picked up my first card, which is this Shadowless Raichu.
Oh,
And this was in the display case next door. And honestly, I don't know why I went with Raichu. Like, it wasn't that appealing to me over other cards. I was told at one point that a local kid in our grade had the entire collection, that he was willing to trade a Mew or a Mewtwo for a Raichu, and I was like, "Oh, this is the money card to get." Uh, but, I decided to keep it, and it's just one of those keepsakes that I'm glad I still have around. I did
Mhm.
trade it away at one point, and it took a lot to get it back, and it's in terrible condition, but when people ask me, like, "What's your most valuable card?" Some pretty good ones in the collection, but this was the one that always comes to mind, so,
That's pretty
we
cool.
both came back with a trophy that day,
Yeah.
Shadowless Blastoise, Shadowless Raichu. I like to tell him that mine was better because he had a weakness and I one-shot him, but, you know, we didn't really know how the game was, like, officially played, we were still learning.
Right, right. I actually just got this back today, a Shadowless 9 Zapdos. I opened this from a pack myself not too long ago. So that'll go into the personal collection as a self-pulled card. So I love Zapdos is actually my favorite card from base set because I remember having it was an unlimited Zapdos, but it was just beat up like crazy. I mean, I carried that thing everywhere. I put it in every single deck, even if there wasn't electric energies. I just wanted the card in my hand. Like, like I used it anywhere and everywhere I went. So like that card was my favorite. I love the artwork for whatever reason. It's my favorite of the legendary birds. So it was cool to pull that, even though the value's not there. Raichu is one of those that's hard to get at a 10. So quite a bit of value in the
I'm
shadowless
just
set there.
envisioning I'm just envisioning you deck building, and it's like a water deck, and you just throw the Blastoise in there just because you have it, and you're like, "You know what? It doesn't have the energies to do anything, but people need to know in the
It's there.
collection."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back in the day, where'd you grow up? If you found shadowless cards, where were you buying these cards at?
So I'm from Minnesota,
Okay.
lived in Minnesota my whole life. To the best of my knowledge, there wasn't a lot of, like, the early vintage first edition base. It kinda came a little bit before me anyway, like, we were buying stuff, that was already opened, already in the display case
Hmm.
that the company had acquired in some way, shape, or form. Our local card store was called Schindler's. I'm not sure if that was just a local one or if it was a retail chain of stores.
Hmm.
That part I'm not entirely sure about, but I know that it was, like, 2 cities over, and it was always a magical experience to go there, and, being a younger kid, you'd have to be extra nice to the parents, maybe take out the trash a few times and beg and plead, and maybe, just maybe, you'd get lucky and be able to pawn 1 or 2 packs off of them, and that was just kind of the hope is if we were going out to, the stores in that area, the shopping mall for back to school shopping or whatever,
Hmm.
had to be good so we could stop at Schindler's.
So are they still in business?
They are not, I'm not sure when exactly they went out of business. I think it was, like, in 2013 or something. They were definitely more of a sports card store, but they definitely had some of the different trading card games, available there as well.
Hmm.
I'm not entirely sure about the backstory about how they went out of business, but I know there was some sort of, like, uh, bankruptcy proceeding and, like, back deals with investors or, misrepresenting their, income or their assets in the bankruptcy process. I'm not really sure, but I do
Interesting.
remember seeing some articles in the local newspapers uh, about some fraud charges or something.
Oh
So,
wow.
kind of a stain on the childhood, and prefer not to know all the details, I think, because to me,
Yeah.
it's just, magical place.
Yeah. Do you remember going back there ever in high school or college, like during the summer? Would you ever just go back for whatever reason?
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned that because one of my favorite pastimes outside of collecting is I have a motorcycle. I like to go out on rides, and I teach English classes. That's my main job.
Hmm.
And so I'm a big fan of audiobooks. So I'll put in audiobooks into one ear and just drive on these backcountry roads when I'm able to. And that was one of the last things that I did this year when Pokemon was really popping off in October, as we were preparing for the Minnesota snowstorms, and we have terrible winters.
Hmm.
We were getting ready for that. I made a drive over there, and not sure what's in there right now. I think it's like a massage therapy building or something 'cause it's part of like a mall chain.
Hmm.
But I had to go back and make that pilgrimage, and I do every once in a while and kind of drive by slowly. People probably have no idea what I'm doing. Probably like looking the place over with intentions of breaking in or something and stealing their massage chairs or whatever it is they do there. But I mean, it's kind of a maybe not yearly, but every once in a while, you gotta relive the childhood
Yeah.
magic and those places that once meant something to you.
Yeah, absolutely. You might find a base set pack underneath the carpet or something there. So always gotta look. Yeah, I I can relate to that. There's always like random routes that you used to take as a kid, or just places you used to go. You could go down and just kind of remember, those times of going to a friend's house or going to the shop or whatever it might be. So that's pretty cool. Um, but taking on that uh, responsibility as a gym leader early on, 12 and 13. I mean, were you heavily into playing the game at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I wouldn't say I was heavily into it, like, I wasn't a competitive player by
Mm.
any means, but had stumbled upon it one time. I was out at our local shopping mall. It's not a very big mall. There was an On-Q record store there. Not sure if you're familiar with those. They were a subsidiary of Sam Goody.
Mm, mm-mm. I
Anyway,
know
they
I know
sold
FYEs. I'm from Michigan,
yeah,
but
yeah, it's kinda like one of those. They'd
okay.
sell CDs and, like, some T-shirts and stuff, almost reminiscent of a music-themed Hot Topic store or something
Hmm.
like that,
Okay.
and, there were some people there that were playing cards. They were playing Pokemon on sold out tables, and I had to inquire about that, and I found out that they ran a league every Saturday morning, and this is right around the time when Team Rocket set came out, and so that was one of the things that was exciting too, was to have Team Rocket cards available. So I made it a regular thing to come every Saturday to this league, and participate in it, and there was a couple of different older members there that were the gym leaders that ran
Hmm.
the thing. The store sponsored it and provided the space and the card tables and the infrastructure necessary to make it happen. And over time, one of the gym leaders had to move away, and I was kind of thrust into a role of getting to take on some of those responsibilities ahead of time. It's kind of like a test run, which was completely unbeknownst to me. And it was a pretty magical experience when one guy left and he left me some of his cards and he tossed me his gym leader shirt, which was like a size double XL. I don't know if you've ever seen the old Pokemon League gym leader
I
shirts.
have one.
They're like all yellow. They've got like the energy types on the back.
Yep, I
I
got one.
actually have mine framed on my wall along with all the badges that I had earned in my original badge book and my TCI card, and the stamper for stamping Liege badge books.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I had given me one of the stampers and, like, put me in charge of, like, kids that were finishing different tasks and checking them off and doing the paperwork, and after about a month of that, this guy had to move away. He's like, "You earned this. You're gonna be our new gym leader," and so I worked with the other one that was there kind of as an assistant, managing the league for the next year and a half.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I've got one of those yellow shirts. I got it from my local store. He also had a red one, but he only wanted to sell one to me, and I picked the yellow because I liked yellow better than red. So I don't know what if there was a different tier, or if it was just like a different year that they used red.
Yeah, so I actually have the red one on my wall too. We had one of those. The other guy kept that one, but those weren't released until the Neo sets came out. When Neo Genesis was first released,
Mm.
Wizards of the Coast, a fresh new line of products and promo cards to the league, new badges for the second iteration. And they also included one of those t-shirts. And he's like, that one's mine. You get to keep it. We did promote another player though to a gym leader at that point since we had three shirts in total. So somebody else was yellow shirted as we called it at the time, or
Hmm.
red shirt leader, and then there's kind of a hierarchy.
Well, I went for the wrong one then. Um, yeah, it's kind of you look back at these roles that people used to play as old gym leaders, and that put in all this time and effort to do this for just the local store tournaments, but there's no like real rare promos or any fancy cards that came out then that they got a hold of like today, where people get staff printed cards, or staff stamped cards, um, the pre-releases and all that. They didn't really have that. I mean, I guess other than the pre-release Clefable and Aerodactyl and was it Seadra? But
Misty Cedra was in
yeah,
there,
and
and to the
Gear.
best of my knowledge, none of those we got at our league. At least I wasn't
Mhm,
there until Team Rocket, but I do remember the bricks of
mhm.
the Dark Gyarados pre-release and the bricks of the Misty's Seadra pre-release. Uh, like you're saying with the promo cards, though, we look at them in mass quantities. None of them were worth particularly much or particularly rare.
Mhm.
It's kind of wild to me to see some of those holographic promo cards, though, with such low populations right now, selling in PSA 10s for like thousands of dollars. And it's like bricks of these things. Just like the print quality on that many cards being that poor is something that just always boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, especially that Black Star Eevee hollow. That one, like is just the standard for hard to grade card. That thing is insane with 10 PSA 10s or something like that out of I don't know how many were attempted. Um, but yeah,
Probably wasn't any indication there had to have been millions of them, but
yeah.
that's probably overestimate. Still though,
Well,
there's
I
just
mean,
so many.
they printed like you said, they were given out as bricks, but they were given in they were loose. They were in cardboard boxes, shifting around during shipment and moving around the store and all that. So, yeah, it's understandable that they came out of they had some bad quality, but yeah, it's amazing to see cards like that hold such low pops in 10. It's pretty cool. So it's nice to have at least a couple cards like that to chase. Um, so moving forward, I mean, you kind of stuck with Pokemon this whole time. Did you ever venture off into Magic or Dragon Ball Z or Naruto or Harry Potter, anything like that?
So I'll preface that by saying I never got into the Harry Potter cards, but I'm a huge Harry Potter fan.
Okay.
I must have read all the books at like 6 or 7 times. So I never ventured into the card series though. I do have some of them that just through like collection purchases over the years, you'd get those random odds and ends. So I do have some Yu-Gi-Oh cards, some Dragon Ball Z cards, some Harry Potter cards. And when I say some, I mean like a handful here or there
Hmm.
that are mostly played, that I've never really bothered to sort or get rid of. But the one was Magic the Gathering that you mentioned, and I did play Magic the Gathering just with friends locally once our league closed down. That was kind of what a lot of people migrated to since we were aging.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of fun playing that game. One of the things that frustrated me though, and this is probably true of any game, is just the obsolescence as new sets were released. That like in order to remain competitive, you almost had to buy into the new cards. And that wasn't something that I had the resources for at the time or that I really wanted to do. So just something fun with friends. I still have some cards, but uh, no, that was more of a playability side for me rather than a collecting side, where Pokemon
Yeah.
was always prioritized with the collecting over the playing.
Did you ever put together full sets back in the day of Pokemon? Was that a an early goal, or were you just going after
Yeah,
certain
so
cards?
thinking about Magic, I don't know, maybe I was a bit more ambitious or forward thinking as my fifth or sixth grade self, but I was looking to Magic cards as like the alpha set and the beta set, seeing that some of those cards were worth decent money. I mean, not nearly what they are today.
Hmm.
I was like, first edition base set is something that I want to do. So like fifth or sixth grade, I started collecting a first edition base set, and so every time I went to a card store or found somebody that had unavailable no matter how terrible the condition was. That was like priority number one. And I had several trade binders that I had amassed over time. And I'm like, you can pretty much have whatever you want. I need that first edition fire energy. Free hologram. I need it for the collection. So that was one of my first goals. And I only got it like 2/3 of the way completed through it before I discovered eBay because prior to that, it was just you had to get lucky and find somebody in the neighborhood that happened to have those cards.
Hmm.
Um, I did make it a goal to collect every single first edition Wizards of the Coast card from base set through Neo Destiny. That's really when I left off with my collecting journey.
Hmm.
And so, as far as my binder sets, I still have some of those intact. Most of them are played cards. There are some holes missing here or there, but for the most part, I was able to do that before 2002. Is it that Neo Destiny came out?
Hmm.
I think it was about
Wow.
2002. Yeah.
Yeah, I think and ending of 2001, beginning of 2002. I'm pretty sure it was the beginning of 2002. Wow, that's really early to pick out first edition base set or just first edition in general to have that intuition to pick up full sets like that, even if they we know were played. Um, so at what point did you finally discover, I guess, the higher end side of Pokemon collecting with PSA grading and all that? Because from what I can see from your YouTube videos and your Instagram, you kind of go over full PSA 10 sets basically of these WotC era sets. Um, so when did that come into play for you, and what drove you to do that?
Yeah, so I think with a lot of collectors that are after vintage sets anyway, it came from, I don't know, maybe motivated by the inability to attain those goals that you had as a child and just trying to like reconnect with that childhood and accomplish something that just feels unfinished.
Hmm.
And so when I finished up college in 2011, That's really when I turned my attention back to finishing that first edition base set that I hadn't finished before. And so I was missing the Charizard still. There was like 2 or 3 other holographic cards that I was missing. I think at the time I picked up the Charizard for like 120 bucks and it was not very good condition. I'd probably peg it as like a PSA 6 or maybe even lower, 4 or 5. And some of those other cards, and once I finished that set and got all of the cards that I needed for relatively cheap, I was like, "Oh, the graded cards are a thing. These look really cool that are slabbed. I wanna start doing that." So it was just a matter of, like, slowly liquidating some of what I had and upgrading,
Hmm.
and it was a bit of a financial investment, but I think a lot of people, uh, that are coming into the hobby now don't really realize how much more accessibility there was to that type of collecting at the time,
Hmm.
where you could knock out a first edition PSA 9 holographic card for under $100 all day in 2011. It was maybe 80 bucks, 75 for some of them. So it was something I just kind of picked at over time, starting with base set, and that was my only goal was to just do base set. I already had the other sets. Um, but it was about that time that guys like Zach, Jim at Pokemon, started his YouTube channel, and I know TCA Gaming was doing it as well. And there's a couple other personalities out there going through how to grade PSA cards, different set collecting goals that they were going through. And so once that initial goal was done, I did what pretty much every collector I think does, and that's just to create a new goal. And you're just never satisfied. You know, there's always something new to collect and a new goal to attain. And so that's kind of where my attention went after that first PSA 9 base set was completed.
Okay, so yeah, and I mean that's the thing. Like back then, 70, $80 a card is a lot of money to us. I mean, most of these Pokemon collectors that started off early, like you said, you're a teacher. You don't make that much money coming out of school. You're still in debt from student loans. So spending $80 a week or whatever it might be on a card is a lot. It's a lot to take on. So um, yeah, the fact that you
It's
were
probably good not to downplay it there and be like, it was only 70 or $80 because, like, that was a lot of money when you're just entering your profession for the
yeah.
first time. But at the same time, I think, like, people should acknowledge that it wasn't like dropping 20K on this card and then, 45,000 on the Charizard. That just wasn't the reality at the time. It
Mhm.
was significantly more affordable and accessible, but you still had to budget and there was still limitations.
Right, and you still have that sense and the world telling you to save up for a house or put it into a 401k, do these safe traditional investments. So the fact that anybody really at that time was willing to take that risk and instead of put $50 into a target to date fund, they put it into a Charizard. Like to me, it's mind blowing because like although I feel like I look back and I looked at Pokemon cards, but for me, I was just like, let's just do the safe, sound investments that everyone else does, and I'll be fine. And then I got bored real quick, and it got out of hand real quick after that too. So, greatest investment choice that I think any of us could have made. Um, so, really, your first set, PSA 9 base set. Do you remember who you were buying from back then? Probably Gary
Yeah,
and Ed.
if I were buying from some of these larger, collectors out there, I probably wouldn't know because I wasn't that connected with the community at the time.
Mm,
I do, recognize one name that was pretty big in helping me with some cards, though, and that was eBirdman.
hmm
I've met the guy, I know he's a legend in the hobby. I'm not sure how active he is on eBay anymore, but I remember, like, listings everywhere. If it was PSA graded, like, at least half of them were going to be his, and, that was one seller that I definitely credit some of the collection to.
Cool. Yeah, I talked to him yesterday actually. Um, Yeah, I've never really like looked at his eBay, and I've talked about this before, where I don't think I've ever bought from him, like knowingly. And like people are shocked by that because, like you said, he was the guy. He had like 50% of PSA cards on eBay for the longest time. Um, but yeah, he's been incredibly busy and putting some stuff together, and I'm not exactly sure, but I hope to have him on the podcast too. That would be a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah, there's a lot I would like to know more about him.
yeah.
Like I said, he was like this mythical figure, at least early on, and I don't know little about him, even though I know a lot about like some of the other figures that have emerged in the hobby since.
hmm
So definitely get him if you're able to.
Yeah, it'll be a fun little conversation, I think. Um, so after that. You actually messaged me and mentioned that that you credit Gem at Pokemon for kind of shifting your strategy or your goals. What was his influence on you?
All right, so that's a pretty big question. So we'll try to break that one down.
Take your time. We're here.
And
We got plenty of time.
yeah, so initially, I want to make this clear that like early on, I never saw collecting in Pokemon as like an investment. Like you compared it to investing in a 401k or being a good investment choice, and that's definitely not the lens that I saw it as. It
Mm.
was just I want these cards. This is something that I did earlier. Maybe they'll double in price someday if I'm really lucky. If other people are having midlife crisis, childhood nostalgia, it just happens to be happening earlier for me now that I'm on college. And I was fortunate that like didn't live a very lavish lifestyle. I've never gone to bars. I don't go out to eat very often, or at least I didn't at the time. I do a lot more now, just out of convenience. But it's a pretty frugal lifestyle, so I was able to use some of that money that some of my peers were using more frivolously to buy some of those things that I wanted. As far as like getting into other sets and collecting, it was about that time that I discovered that eBay could be a good place to pick up collections and do some of the grading myself. And I think that was probably the best decision was like if I'm after Gym Challenge set, which is one of the first ones that I went after just because I always loved the artwork from that set.
Great set.
Like I'm gonna buy a set for a couple $100 and grade all the cards. Yeah, I see that. You got the Giovanni's Persian. That's a tough one to grade right there.
Hmm.
Beautiful card on that one though.
Yeah.
But if you buy the set and grade the cards, and then I was looking at PSA 9 sets, that was my goal, and I didn't really know how the grading process worked. This is 2011, I sent my first PSA submission, and I ended up doing pretty well early on with some of those sets that I purchased, getting a lot of the holographic cards for Gym Challenge and Neo Destiny and PSA 10s, first edition.
Mm.
And for some of those in Neo Destiny, those were like pop 5 or under. So
Hmm.
that's when Zach reached out to me and he's like, "Hey, I see you got these Neo Destiny cards. Interested in selling them?" And some of them I had doubles of, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll help you out." And he had some cards that I needed, so it became this like occasional trading and just messaging back and forth. And I wouldn't say like we were really close at the time. It's just kind of this acquaintance that I picked up in Pokemon that was doing what I was trying to do on a much higher level, much more efficiently. And my goal at the time was again those PSA 9 sets. And since I had about a 50 split of nines and tens, and he was after them and he's like, "Yeah, the 10 sets are really amazing." And he just kind of, without trying to, talked me into keeping the tens instead of flipping the tens and buying more sets and getting the nines. And so, really, the hobby kind of became self sustaining for me in those early years where I'd buy a set, trade the holographic cards, keep the ones that I needed for my set, even if they were nines. Like I wanted one of each for sure. If I happened to get some extras that other people wanted, I could resell those and reinvest it into buying more cards and then grading and expanding my collection. So even through those years, there was never this thought of like, "Hey, I'm gonna build a business off this. I'm gonna make money off this." It was always just this break even strategy that allowed me to grow my collection and complete some of the goals that I'd set. So I never imagined that it would get to the point that we're at today. It's very fortuitous. And I owed Zach a lot of respect and a lot of help along the way because like he's the one that encouraged me not to just stick with base set, not just to go for nines, but to, raise the bar a little bit and take a chance at doing something even more difficult because it would have been easy just to stick with the nines, but
Hmm.
really not the long-term best interest that we're seeing now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Zach was probably my biggest influence when I got back into the hobby. So he's really helped a lot of people get started and understand what to go after, really find your true passion within the hobby of what you want to collect. So that's really cool.
I do want to say too, he's like one of the nicest collectors that I've ever met, most genuine people too, because
Yeah.
even when I like bombard him with questions that I just didn't know who to ask, like, what's the grading process like? How many cards do you have to send? Do you need to put insurance on it? Like, just these random questions that who do you turn to? This is a new thing for me and probably for most people at the time. And he'd just always be his regular self, just super kind and give you detailed answers and some advice and just give you that chunk of his time that I know is valuable but super appreciated for somebody new coming into the hobby. Frankly, we need more people like that
Hmm.
because it's just a good ambassador for what we collect and what we do.
Yeah. And I always I start to get a lot of messages now, and I'll be short quite a bit, and but there will be times where I'll think back and think that same thing, like, Zach did this for me when he was, I mean, he still is big time, but big time YouTuber, and I'm getting these basically lame questions that you can Google yourself, but getting that affirmation from somebody that's been doing it is really helpful. So, yeah, I look back at that too and try to pass it along as much as possible. So sorry to everybody that I'm short with. I don't mean it. It just, days are bad sometimes. Um, so
There's so much stuff to do now, like, the
yeah.
community has grown so much. The
Hmm.
number of different social media platforms that exist now and types of messages, the number of messages, the different places they're coming in, it's a lot more to manage probably, but still, like, he must have had the patience of a saint.
Yeah.
So, I
Still does.
appreciate that,
Still
Zach.
does.
Zach, if you're watching this, thank you.
So how did he? Well, yeah. How did he know that you had these cards coming in? Did you have an Instagram back then? Because I see your Instagram now. There's not too many pictures. Where were you sharing your growing collection?
Yeah, my guess is I probably had some up on eBay at the
Mm,
time, ones that I had doubles of, and that's maybe how he reached out to me first. I do remember that most of our communication was coming through email, and I have a couple different emails, but I think the one that I gave him was, like, my old, like, AOL account email that it's the email that just keeps on ticking, it takes us back to the early '90s, but,
hmm.
that's mainly where we talked, and it's a fun fact, like, when he was going through his PSA 10 master set collection that he's been working on, uh, I actually got him the last shadowless PSA 10 that he needed to complete that set. I graded the Blastoise, and I know that's one of the low population ones,
Hmm.
uh, and I think at the time he had a Beckett 9.5 or something in that place. Maybe it was something else, but it was definitely a different grading company, and I was like, "Zach, I know you need this one, and, you got some stuff that I need." So we worked out a trade there, and he was super gracious about that, and, uh, yeah, we talked a lot through some different situations and trading deals like that, but I remember being really proud when, he unveiled that collection. I think he made a YouTube video covering pretty much every one of his collections. I was like, "I did that. I helped him with that one." So,
Yeah.
just being featured on his channel, even though I don't know if he ever mentioned me by name, I was like, "That's awesome."
Yeah, it's a really good feeling to help people out and help them finish their goals like that. I always try to pick out a few things here and there that I know people are looking for. So it's always fun to get them a good deal or get a nice trade going when it really means a lot to them. So um,
It helps a lot of us, like, vicariously feel like we're part of that accomplishment as
mhm,
well. Like, he's doing this massive thing with his collection. It's like, if you can contribute in some way to that, it almost feels like you have partial ownership of the accomplishment,
mhm.
which not to take anything away from Zach, you did all the work, but, if I can, be connected with that accomplishment in some way, I'm gonna take it.
Yeah, well deserved. He's getting so close to finishing, all the WotC hollows in a 10. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, I think he's at the top of the list for on PSA registry for just about all of them. But we noticed that you're up there too for quite a few of these as well. Um,
So I've actually had a lot of these sets for the better part of probably 5 years, and I just never bothered to register them. I didn't know that PSA registry was a thing, so
mm,
I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna start packing them up there just for the sake of it. It's kind of addicting actually when you see them go up and you see, like, those different rankings, and they have some point system that I don't think really means anything, or I'm not really sure how it's calculated, but you see your points go up, and it's like, "Ooh, I have points now."
I think they do giveaways.
It's
Um,
gratifying.
yeah, I haven't gotten into that. I don't think I ever will, because like you said, it seems a little bit addicting, and um, also I don't like collecting graded cards that much myself. I like sealed product. I like binder sets. I like random unique things. When there's some graded cards that I keep here and there, like I'll hopefully keep that Zapdos for a while. Um, but yeah, I've just never been into that. I don't know why. And I mean, it definitely has hurt the potential or this potential that I have today with running a Pokemon business. If I was much more, um, I guess, insightful of graded cards and buying collections like you were, I could have built and amassed this incredible inventory. Um, but lo and behold, I kind of just stuck to my sealed product, and yeah, I did great. So not complaining, but could have done more.
Sealed sealed product is a fun route to go too because you always have the option of opening it yourself if you're really into that, or you can, break it down and sell it piece by piece. That was never appealing to me just because of the risk of, like, dealing with people with, pack deals of getting a pack, claiming its weight, or opening it and sending back cards that are missing. With
Huge
graded
headache.
cards, I feel like it's a slightly more open and shut case, though there is certainly risk with really selling anything
Yeah.
online.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean that's one of the biggest reasons why I moved out of sealed product, because of that risk, and it was just a big headache. Um, so what are your goals right now? I mean, like you said, you've finished a lot of these WotC first ed sets. I know there's probably a few here and there. I mean, what big pieces are you missing right now that you're still chasing?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm at sort of a stalemate at this point. Like, people see my collections and they think I have a lot of wealth to acquire the cards that I'm still missing. And the truth is, like, I could sell parts of the collection to get some of those other pieces that I'm missing, but then I would need to replace those ones that I sold. So a difficult point when, like, you're looking at a set like Neo Destiny, or sorry, Neo Genesis, and the ones you're missing are the Typhlosion number 17, Slowking, and Heracross. And we're talking like at least 4 figures, maybe in the 5 figures for some of those, and some definitely in the 5 figures, and that's just something that I'll probably never be able to afford, and
Mm,
if I do, like I said earlier, I'm a pretty frugal person when it comes to my money. I'm pretty conservative with it, and whereas spending a couple $100 on a set and grading those myself is something that was appealing to me at the time, I don't think I could bring myself to pay $50,000 for a card to upgrade it from a 9 to a 10 if I'm being honest.
mhm.
So I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for me. Some of the cards that I have appreciated so much that it's getting to a point where I might part with some of them and downgrade some just to be a homeowner someday. Like, that's
Yeah.
something that I don't have. I'm still renting here. I've
Mhm.
got kind of a cool setup for making these videos, but there's a lot that I want to do. There's some like nonprofit charity organizations that I want to start with some of my other hobbies and interests. And Pokemon has always just been a passion of mine and one hobby. It's not something that I've ever really viewed as a career or a profession, but I don't know. I mean, I'd love to hang on to a lot of it and someday liquidate the collection entirely, maybe after I'm dead or before that, and uh, set up some of my family members. I don't have a wife or kids myself, but I've got a great niece and nephew, and I
Mhm.
to pay for their college someday. Like, in my family, I was the first and only person to finish high school and go to college, so
Wow.
having that opportunity for my niece and nephew is something that I'm really passionate about. That's why I'm a teacher actually,
Hmm.
by profession, and so that's really the calling and the passion, and that one will always take precedent over some of these other hobbies that I'm involved in.
Yeah. That's incredible. So it doesn't sound like you've kind of you've really kept any doubles moving forward. Do you do a lot of buying and selling at all right now? I mean, or is it?
So I maintain a eBay store pretty regularly, and I have a lot of inventory of like ungraded things. In the past, like when I buy collections, I was never really interested in grading something if I didn't think it would get a 10 because
Mhm.
that's what I was after. And so the last few years I've gone through and I've been sending in a lot of stuff, getting occasional 10s, some 9s, some 8s. And some of those I'm selling, some of them I'm still hanging on to because you're a collector, you become something of a hoarder, and it
Yep.
gets hard to you get emotionally attached the longer something's been with you, even if it's been in a cardboard box forgotten about for 5 or 6 years, you take it out and you're like, "Oh yeah, that exists. And it's gonna go back to where it belongs in that cardboard box, but now it'll be encased in plastic." So, yeah, I do some selling. I do buy some stuff on occasion. We were talking about this, I think, before we started, but, one of the things that's been kind of fun is going back and reliving some of the pack opening stuff. So when Evolutions came out, that was a great opportunity to have some of the nostalgia of seeing some of those original artworks and pulling a Charizard from a pack, which is something I never got to do as a kid, at least with base set.
Mhm.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was one of the biggest things that I wanted to do when I first got back into it was to rip open packs because there's no better feeling than that. And I started pretty good with a case of evolutions and was able to get quite a bit of vintage product as well to open, which I probably never should have, but it was fun. Definitely worth it. Learned a lot. Um, so with all that being said, with evolutions being a big motivation for you to open stuff, what do you are you ready for this 25th anniversary? Are you prepared to
You know what?
splurge and buy whatever vintage
There's
stuff they reprint?
there's some sort of Neo reprint. I'm gonna be a kid in the candy store because the Neo sets were my favorites personally,
Hmm.
and, those are the ones that, like, I've been most passionately trying to collect and finish, and so far, like, Neo Destiny is the one that I have done in PSA 10. Neo Discovery, really close. It's Houndoom, Houndour, and, Yanma,
Hmm.
which all 3 of those are probably pipe dreams at this point, but who knows? I remember having the chance to get the Houndour and the Houndoom for, like, $200 each, and,
Should have got a 10.
"No, I don't have the money for that one. I'm gonna buy this thing instead," and
Hmm.
that opportunity never came back, so that was a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes buying. You look back and see regrets, and,
Yeah.
you know, it is what it is, but, Neo Genesis is one that I was, like, prioritizing for the longest time. I've been working on that set ever since I started, really, like, back to 2011 when I sent my first cards in for grading. That's when I got a couple of the big ones out of the way, like the Meganium number 10, which I
Mm,
think is pop 17, and the
really?
Steel Energy, I think that's when I got that one as well, which is also a pretty low population card. So, uh, that's a set I've been seeking for a while, but if they could do a reprint of some of the Neo cards and sign me up for that, I'm gonna buy, like, 50 cases. It's exaggerated. That's not true, I'll buy, like, 2 boxes.
2 cases. Do you have the Lugia?
Do have the Lugia, yep. I
You
actually graded 2 of them in the same submission, PSA 10.
Wow.
The first
Wow.
one I went and sold right away. I had an offer that was an all-time high at the time. I think this was like 2015 or 2016. I don't remember for sure, but sold it for $1,600 on that first one.
Mm,
I got the second one for my collection
yep.
because I wasn't gonna leave my collection at all. And, you know, we see where it's at right now, and now it's getting really tempting to leave the collection. So
Yeah.
thought has been going around my mind about taking 1 or 2 sets and going, "You know what? I can live with PSA 9s and
Mhm.
having some sort of, financial security for some things or a down
Yeah.
payment on a house," but
I mean, 100
for
grand
now,
plus, that's half a house basically.
yeah, pretty much. But right now, I'm just happy to have them, like,
Mhm.
it's still cool, and it's not like I'm sinking in some sort of, bankruptcy situation where I have to sell them, but it's like
Right.
it's tough. Like
Yeah.
I said earlier, you get emotionally attached to stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, I finally officially shipped out my Trophy Kangaskhan today, and it was tough to let that thing go. I mean, it had been paid for a while. I was just taking my sweet time with it and making sure we get all the shipping logistics, everything set up properly. So, um, yeah, that was a tough one to do, but it's gonna help me go a very long way with it. Hopefully, I mean, the money can go fast. There's so many. I've been buying like crazy. And I need to slow down a little bit, but yeah, it's amazing what Pokemon is doing for people right now. And I mean, like you said, you're a teacher. You're very frugal still, and I mean that what you have is life-changing money. It really is. It can just really provide this not just obviously a financial blanket, but a mental blanket of that's the most important thing of just not having to worry, and you can really focus on your job and provide some great gifts for your niece and nephew, which would be awesome. And you'll obviously get to that point, but um, so you have the majority of these big cards. You have the entire Neo Destiny. You have the Shining Charizard. Do you have the first edition base Charizard in a 10?
No, with first edition base, I only did the PSA 9 set, and
Okay.
that's also one of the regrets was not going for the 10s right away, but I remember when first edition base Charizard, PSA 10, $2,000, and I was like, "There's no way I could ever afford that," and who would spend $2,000 on a piece of cardboard? 'Cause I'm paying, like, $200 for the PSA 9 at the time.
Hmm.
It was ungraded, but that's just what it cost at the time for a mint condition first edition Charizard.
Wow.
And, that just seemed too extreme to me at the time. Uh, Retrospect is a killer because now, obviously, would have been a great investment,
Mhm.
would have been a great collection piece too. But I actually did acquire and send in for grading 3 different PSA 9 first edition Charizards. I
Mm.
still have 2 of them. One's a thick stamp, one's a thin stamp.
Very good.
Third one I graded, the 3rd graded one, I sold at the time, and again, this is going back a ways, might be 2014,
Mhm.
maybe earlier, $700 on that one,
Nice.
which was a lot of money at the
Big
time,
big
and I
win.
don't really regret it, and that's something that people ask me about sometimes is like, "Yeah, I bet you wish you had that back," and I'm like, "Well, I guess so, like, who wouldn't like to have the added value of time on that asset?" But at the time, that money was used and reinvested to buy more collections that acquire some of the things that I have in my collection that I wouldn't otherwise and probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to get, in today's market anyway, so
Yeah, and
a bit of perspective there.
there's so many different points that I would have sold things at. Like, if I had Charizards back then, especially like 3 of them, I would have sold at the $700 point. I would have sold at the $1,000 point. I would have, there were so many different inflection
Yeah,
points that I would have sold at. So it's, you can't look back
and
and be like,
going back to my philosophy of collecting at the time, it was never about like, long-term financial investment. That's not how I saw it. I saw it as my goal was to collect one of each of the first edition base set holos,
mhm,
PSA 9, then eventually one of each holographic card graded. 9s and 10s is what I was going for, slowly upgrading the 9s to 10s. And so selling one card that I had a duplicate of just made a lot of sense.
mhm.
Maybe not from an investment standpoint as we look back in hindsight, but at the time it was like, yeah, this one doesn't need to be in my collection. There are so many other things that do, and that money is going to give me the ability to do that.
And that's why collectors win. Um, so you started this YouTube channel now, showing off your collection, doing a little bit of market talk. What's your what kind of motivated you to do that? I mean, probably the fact that we all have a lot of spare time now being at home, but was there anything else that kind of motivated you to start the YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I think just having my collection available to me and a lot of them are kept in storage where I never really get a chance to look at them and appreciate them. Kind of gave me an excuse to get them out and kind of flip through some cards and talk about cards. And I've been part of the collecting community for a pretty long time. It's been a decade now. Even before E4 was around, I was kind of lurking on PokeGym. I don't know
Mm,
if you were around for those days. But it was another forum that was probably more geared towards the game more
mhm.
so, and there was like a sub collecting element. I know Scott was over there initially
That
before he
shifted
started
to
before.
PCCCC or whatever, right? And then to E4.
Yeah. So when E4 started, that was like a godsend for collectors everywhere. I think that we had that community and that place, that forum to talk about different things related to collecting. Uh, so I don't know. I think the channel just initially was initially started by I had these cards that were pretty cool, that were pretty substantial collection that people might be interested in seeing, and I also had a lot of success at this collecting side of things. And I'm not trying to be uh, overly patting myself on the back because I think it was just fortuitous timing and just being really immersed in the collecting hobby and having some of that experience built up over a number of years. Sometimes people aren't always aware of that. They just assume that people that are successful right now are only doing so because they had the resources immediately available. And that's not the case. It's just a matter of knowledge and timing and sometimes a little bit of luck. I thought maybe I could pass along some of that knowledge to other people that are maybe making these gut reactions to certain market trends or these predictions that are really hasty generalizations and not looking at various factors of the market that would seem more obvious to people that have been around for a while,
Mhm.
than those that are just entering the hobby.
Are you enjoying it? Do you think this is something that this is a question that I keep throwing at myself is, if things go back to normal and you gotta go back to work and do all that stuff. I mean, I guess for me, I don't have my 9 to 5 anymore, but is this something you think you would continue to do if things kind of shifted back into gear with, I guess, pre-COVID?
Yeah, so I still have been working,
Mhm,
throughout this, and I'm kind of a workaholic when it comes to it because the job of a teacher is really like 2 jobs in 1 right now. It's pretty extreme, but
mhm,
I really like doing it, and I work with high school kids. They're really great, and they're handling it really in stride. we've done a number of different models of learning. We've done some in-class hybrid situations, some online only, and now we're doing a combination of both simultaneously, which really wild because it's like, all right, got to do these kids need this online, and these ones are in class right now, and be going back to that model here shortly. Between that, I also have some other hobbies that I like to participate in, and those can almost be a full time job at times.
What are
Fortunately,
those?
as a teacher, I do have summers to kind of decompress and do some of those other things that I enjoy.
Hmm.
Also, um, one of the things that I teach is video production. So I think
Oh,
this genre kind of comes naturally to me,
okay.
and I've have a couple different YouTube channels that are moderately successful. So that's something that like I kind of already know the process for filming and for editing and how to kind of sequence a video together. So
Okay. Yeah, I could
my
definitely
one of
see.
my favorite things.
Yeah, yeah, you put in a lot more time than I do on my videos with editing, so uh, that's pretty nice to see. What are these other hobbies that you like to partake in? I mean, you said you like to go for rides on your motorcycle. What is there anything else that?
Yeah, so I'm an avid bookworm,
Mhm.
which I've already mentioned. And these hobbies are going to be really like incongruous. So you should just be aware. Just be prepared for that. Um, Obviously, like the Pokemon collecting is one of those main staple hobbies that I do. One of my favorite ones, though, this is actually probably my favorite, is I'm an amateur extreme sports person. I do extreme rollerblading. It's not really big anymore. We were removed from the X Games in 2001,
Yeah,
so it's been a while. But
Team X Blades.
uh, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about Brink,
Yeah, Team Pup and Suds.
yeah, yeah. Um, that's a legendary film in
Great.
its own
Yeah,
right. But
yeah.
most people don't know what I talk about when I tell them that I skate. They assume like skateboarding, which
Mm.
I do a little bit of that as well. But I used to compete through high school and college. Had a couple different sponsors. Traveled around the Midwest a little bit for that, and so now we run with my group of people that still skate. We run a channel where we make different videos for that. We do some like instructional stuff for kids. We run like a nonprofit that provides money for various like professionals that are injured and stuff. So
Wow,
it's kind of the main passion. Really, it's just a sprinkling of all these different hobbies and interests, though, that just kind of coalesce into something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's what I do.
that's awesome. That's really cool. I mean, yeah, I've kind of lost the ability, I guess, to continue my hobby with just playing basketball because no gyms are open and not able to do that. But even now, I just don't have time. So it's great that you're able to balance that out and continue to do that. You know, I think it's very important to get your head out of Pokemon every once in a while because of how crazy it is. You can get very caught up and burnt out very fast. So it's good to have those other additional hobbies. Now, one thing that I really want to ask as a teacher, and although, you know, the past year or so, you probably don't have the ability to, but how many Pokemon cards have you confiscated from your students, if any?
Total of 0.
Ah, come on,
So
man.
teach high I teach high school, so that's just not
Oh,
something
yeah.
I see. Now, if you wanna talk, like, how many, we used to confiscate phones. Now they're actually, like, encouraged to bring electronic devices to class, especially in an online teaching situation. Now they're required, but,
Oh, yeah.
never had Pokemon cards that I had to remove from class. That was just never really a thing at the high school level.
That's a shame. Well, maybe when things go back,
Should give
they
them some and then take them away. That's what I should do.
you could, I think there's a good, chance that they'll make a comeback to high school students now that we've seen all this, explode to where it's at. So, hopefully when things do get back into the swing of things, you'll see some Pokemon cards in your class. I think that'd be a lot of fun and very interesting to talk about. I
Yeah.
would
So I did have a couple students earlier this year though that I caught talking about Logan Paul, and they had the ASET box opening video open. And I don't know if it was like some viral short clip from the box opening, but it was Logan Paul screaming in a really high pitched voice, like, it's a Chansey. And they were just like playing that on repeat. I was like, oh yeah, I know a few things about Chansey. 128 P, ASET, Grunch. They're like,
Have you had
yeah,
conversations with
tell
them
me
about
about
it?
it. And I'm like, I know some things.
Yeah, did you guys dive into it at all, or were they not interested?
I think they were mildly interested. I think
Mm.
if anything, they just thought that I was geek and a nerd, and both are true, both are accurate. So I
Yes.
don't take any offense to that when students give me a hard time
So
because
am I.
if we can't laugh at ourselves, then who can we laugh at?
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and the short notice, of course. I want to show off your Instagram and YouTube here. We got Pokemon Classics. Give him a follow. Check out his videos. It's more editing than me. He's got an incredible collection. And I can't wait to see what you do with it and what you're able to provide with it at whatever point in your life, I guess that is. Because again, Pokemon has changed the lives of so many people, not just emotionally, but even now, financially, which is just incredible. So it's an amazing thing to be a part of. I'm happy to share these conversations with you and everybody, and I hope that we continue to see this great success with Pokemon and this great just interest overall with Pokemon because I'm having a blast. Modern, vintage, everything. It's so much fun. So thank you again. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow this guy, follow me, go everywhere, share it with your friends, share it with your family, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks again for having me on.